Hello friends, I want to talk very briefly about creativity versus interpretation in relation to music and also in relation to philosophy. What I've got in mind is, in terms of the philosophical, is the fact that in my doctorate I went about reformulating certain of the concepts of the philosophy of time of the French post-structuralist Gilles Deleuze. Now, throughout the whole of writing that thesis, creating it, there's piano performance as well. My central driving thesis, essentially, was that I was adding something new to Deleuze studies, while also using Deleuze's concepts as a way of creating my own new concept of time. And I got my doctorate, so must have been okay. But what I want to do with this brief fact is relate it to resonances in the work of musicians, for example, and also other philosophers. Deleuze is a good example himself because he took the works of other philosophers, Kant, Nietzsche, Spinoza, Foucault, Leibniz, and reformulated their concepts to fit his own process of concept creation. I did something similar in my own thesis, although I certainly wouldn't sit here and say it was to the same level as Deleuze's work, of course, but I did it in my own way. As a musician, when I play the music of, for example, John Coltrane, what do I do in that performance? Do I decide to play Coltrane exactly as Coltrane sounded back in 1959 or something? There's no point in doing that because that was then. Time has moved on since then. So there's a version of Giant Steps, one of John Coltrane's most famous pieces maybe, that I've been doing for a few years. And it originally came out during a recording session, a duo recording session, myself on piano and the amazing drummer J.J. Wheeler. And during the course of that session, we pretty much played one long piece for the whole of the album's worth. And the album's called Blue Room, and you can find it online. It's worth checking out. J.J. Wheeler and Steve Troman's Blue Room. But we moved through different jazz standards during the course of that recording. And the second one we did was John Coltrane's Giant Steps. And the way I played it was to have a drone in the left hand of my piano, a G and a D, which kept going throughout the whole of my articulation of the theme of Coltrane's Giant Steps. I didn't do any solos. It's not like I played the theme and then did solos as variations, if you like, over the harmonic structure. I turned the performance of the theme into its own improvisation. I did it with a series of 3-note chords. And one of the things that's interesting about Giant Steps is it has 3 tonal centers, exactly a major third apart. And on the surface of it, it wouldn't seem very possible to be able to keep a drone going through the whole of that without moving it in some way. But I did manage to do that. Little visitor here. Okay, mate. And so, what the ear can do, if the ear is willing, the ear can find resonance between this static drone thing and the shifting harmonies of the reharmonization of the melodic line. What is that I'm doing there? Is that an interpretation? Have I done an arrangement of giant steps? Yes, to both of those questions. But is it more? Is it a recreation, a reformulation? And this is the question that underlies this whole brief talk. If I take Deleuze's concept of the incompossible, for example, he took that concept from Leibniz. He took it from Leibniz and he made something new, created something new for his own purposes. If I take John Coltrane's Giant Steps and I reformulate it in a certain way, which I did, I'm creating something new. Of course, in terms of copyright, because copyright's not very flexible in that sense, there's no way I can claim it as my own work because I'd be in trouble with the Coltrane estate. So there's no point going there. But purely in terms of the musical philosophical, it is something new, something brand new, that Train himself, to the best of my knowledge, never did with that particular piece, although he did get involved in a lot of drone work from My Favourite Things onwards. If it's only interpretation, if it's only making an arrangement, the role of creator still goes to the original artist. If we think in terms of reformulating, recreation, then the hierarchy, composer, performer, is levelled at that point. If we think in terms of, in the philosophical tradition, one philosopher takes the concepts from another philosopher, but that original philosopher very often still has the higher hierarchical point. What's nice about Deleuze's approach is he put it on a plane of immanence. All concepts exist on a plane of immanence, and so they resonate with one another regardless of the historical period from which they came from. So you can see where I'm going with this. You see what I'm going with. Coltrane, original Giant Steps. Not that there's actually an original version, even on the original, the actual session. There were 3 different versions, I think, and one was chosen. Anytime anyone plays that piece, there are various graduations, various levels of distance from that original recording. Maybe mine's one of the most extreme. I'm not sure. There's a very amazing Anthony Braxton version, solo saxophone, where he does a not dissimilar thing. It concentrates solely on the melody line and moves it around different octaves. I think it's clear to see the resonance here. You've got musicians working in certain ways to create something new with extant material, and then you've got philosophers doing a similar thing, working with extant concepts and doing something new with them. So when I talk about the musical philosophical, in a very real sense, I see a resonance, a relationship with the two, which is at the heart of my doctoral thesis, which created a new concept of time that I called rhythmicity, this rhythmic movement between music and philosophy, where sometimes the music is in written form, I write about music, sometimes the philosophy is in written form, not an untypical thing to do about philosophy, but sometimes the philosophy is in musical form, and the music is, of course. Those are the kind of resonances that I feel when I talk about co-creation, if you like, or at the very least a reformulation, a recreation of, from something extant into something that is new and emergent, even though that its roots can be traced back to certain original points. It's still something new, and it exists, to use the Deleuzean term, on this plane of immanence. I hope that's been food for thought, friends, and as always at this time, stay safe, stay well, and I'll speak to you soon. Goodbye.